Right now, the 1st of February, 2026 winter storm is officially over. But the crisis in the United States is not. As of this morning, February 1st, 2026, at least 119 people have been confirmed dead across more than 20 states. From Mississippi to Maine, from Texas to New York, families are still burying loved ones who froze to death on sidewalks, died in crashes on icy highways, or suffered heart attacks while trying to shovel their driveways. In Nashville, Tennessee alone, more than 50,000 customers are starting their seventh straight day without electricity. In northern Louisiana, utility crews are still trying to restore power to ice-damaged lines that snapped under the weight of frozen rain. And across New York City, officials are investigating the deaths of 15 people, including 10 who were found dead outdoors during the coldest stretch the city has seen in years. But here is what makes this moment even more urgent. While crews are still working around the clock to restore heat and power from the last storm, meteorologists are now tracking another massive system. A bomb cyclone is expected to slam into the East Coast tonight, bringing hurricane-force winds, coastal flooding, and up to 12 inches of additional snow to parts of North Carolina, Virginia, and the Mid-Atlantic. New York and Boston, cities that just dug out from nearly 2 feet of snow, are bracing for round two. This is not just about weather anymore. This is about blood banks that have lost more than 20,000 donations because collection centers could not open during the storm. This is about hospital oxygen concentrators that failed when the power went out, leading to deaths that should never have happened. This is about a transportation network so fragile that a single winter storm grounded more than 11,000 flights in one day, the worst since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Here is the important part. The January 2026 winter storm, unofficially called Winter Storm Fern by the Weather Channel, has already caused an estimated $105 to $115 billion in economic damage and losses, according to AccuWeather. That makes it one of the costliest winter disasters in American history, and the storm that is coming tonight could push those numbers even higher. This is the story of how it happened, why it was so deadly, and what it reveals about the systems we depend on to survive the winter. In the maps and satellite loops, the January 2026 winter storm looked like a textbook collision between two opposing forces. Around January 22nd, a powerful low-pressure system formed over the Pacific Ocean near the Baja California Peninsula. At the same time, the polar vortex, a massive ring of cold air that normally stays locked over the Arctic, began to stretch and elongate southward across Canada and Alaska. According to NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that Arctic air mass was then pulled into the continental United States by the developing storm system. But the cold air alone was not enough to create a storm of this magnitude. What made Winter Storm Fern so destructive was moisture, pulled from two separate sources. Warm to humid air surged north from the Gulf of Mexico. Additional moisture came off the coast of California as the low-pressure system crossed the Rocky Mountains. When that moisture collided with the Arctic air mass over the Great Plains on January 23rd, the storm exploded in size and intensity. By the afternoon of January 24th, the Weather Prediction Center had begun issuing storm summary bulletins as the system dropped a dangerous mix of sleet, freezing rain, and heavy snow from northern Texas all the way into Arkansas and Oklahoma. That same day, more than 135,000 customers lost power. Highways across the South became skating rinks. In Little Rock, Arkansas, 6 inches of snow broke a daily record that had stood since 1899. In Nashville, Tennessee, nearly 2 inches of freezing rain fell in a single day, the worst ice storm the region had experienced in decades. Then the storm shifted east. On January 25th, the system underwent what meteorologists call Miller-B cyclogenesis, which means a new, more powerful low-pressure center formed off the coast of the Carolinas and began tracking north toward New England. That is when Winter Storm Fern became a nor'easter. According to the National Weather Service, more than 230 million people across 34 states were under some form of winter weather alert. That is nearly 2/3 of the entire United States population. Snowfall exceeded 50 centimeters in parts of New England and the interior Northeast. New York City's Central Park recorded 11.4 inches of snow, a daily record for January 25th. In Boston's Logan International Airport saw 23.2 inches, the eighth highest snow accumulation in the city's recorded history. And in Toronto, Canada, 46 centimeters of snow fell in a single day, the largest single-day snowfall the city has seen since records began in 1937. By the time the storm finally weakened on January 27th and dissipated over the North Atlantic on January 30th, at least 119 people had lost their lives. The death toll includes 16 people in Mississippi, 15 in New York, 13 in Tennessee, 12 in Kentucky, and 11 in Texas. Among the dead were three young brothers, ages 6, 8, and 9, who fell through ice on a private pond near Bonham, Texas. Two teenage girls in Frisco and Texas were killed when their sled struck a tree while being pulled by a car. In Pennsylvania, three elderly residents died from heart attacks while trying to shovel snow. And across New York City, 10 people were found dead outdoors, victims of hypothermia and exposure during temperatures that dropped well below freezing. At the peak of the storm, more than 1 million customers lost power, primarily in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and the Tennessee Valley, where ice accumulation snapped power lines and toppled trees. More than 20,000 flights were canceled from January 23rd through January 26th. On January 25th alone, over 11,000 flights were grounded, making it the worst day for flight cancellations since March 30th, 2020, at the height of the pandemic. And by the morning of January 26th, the snow covered more than half of the entire continental United States. Walk into one of the emergency shelters still open tonight, and you will see what this storm has done to ordinary families. Gym floors are lined with cots and folded blankets. Children play quietly with donated toys while their parents huddle around extension cords trying to charge phones. Some have been there for nearly a week. They are waiting for two things that still have not fully returned: heat and certainty. According to the American Red Cross, volunteers across multiple states have been operating shelters and warming centers around the clock since January 24th. The organization coordinated with partner agencies like Second Harvest Food Bank to deliver truckloads of meals, snacks, and bottled water to affected communities. But the humanitarian crisis extends far beyond shelter operations. The Red Cross also reported that more than 20,000 blood donations went uncollected during the storm because donation centers were forced to close. That blood shortage is now putting additional strain on hospitals that are already stretched thin from winter flu season and weather-related injuries. Officials estimated that hospitals across the South and Midwest are operating with critically low supplies of type O negative and type O positive blood. In New York, the storm brought the city to a near standstill. 15 people have died in the state, including 10 who were found dead outdoors in New York City during the coldest stretch of weather the region has seen in years. Central Park's daily snowfall record was shattered. A LaGuardia airport closed completely on January 25th. NJ Transit and the NYC ferry suspended service. And now, just days after digging out, the city is preparing for another storm. The National Weather Service has issued winter weather advisories for tonight and tomorrow as the approaching bomb cyclone is expected to bring additional snow, high winds, and coastal flooding. New York Governor Kathy Hochul has extended the state of emergency and urged residents to stay off the roads. In Boston and across Massachusetts, the storm dropped over 20 inches of snow in many areas. Logan International Airport recorded 23.2 inches, forcing the cancellation of more than 500 flights. One person was killed when a snowplow struck a pedestrian in Norwood. When Massachusetts State Police responded to more than 200 crashes and 400 disabled vehicles during the height of the storm. And now, with another system approaching tonight, utility crews are pre-positioning equipment and emergency managers are warning residents to prepare for the possibility of additional power outages. But it is in the South where the crisis has been most severe. In Tennessee, more than 250,000 customers lost power at the peak of the storm. Nashville Electric Service recorded the highest number of outages in the company's history, with 230,000 customers going dark at once. As of this morning, more than 50,000 people are still without electricity, nearly a week after the storm hit. Governor Bill Lee declared a state of emergency, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency has been coordinating response efforts across 12 states. The ice storm that hit Nashville was described by officials as the worst the region has experienced in decades. Trees and power lines collapsed under the weight of ice that, in some areas, exceeded 1 inch thick. In Mississippi, nearly 300,000 customers lost power. 16 people have died in the state, including a 73-year-old man who was killed when a tree fell on his mobile home in Yucca. Governor Tate Reeves confirmed that the University of Mississippi in Oxford will remain closed through at least February 8th, while crews work to restore services and clear damage. In Louisiana, 9 people have died, 5 from hypothermia and 2 from carbon monoxide poisoning. More than 51,000 customers were without power for days. Governor Jeff Landry toured the hardest-hit areas by helicopter on January 27th to assess the damage. Philip May, the CEO of Entergy, told customers that full power restoration would not happen until at least January 31st. Here is the important part. Tennessee, a state that rarely sees ice storms of this magnitude, has extended its statewide emergency order as officials brace for the possibility of additional winter weather. Utility crews from across the southeast have been working 12-hour shifts in dangerous conditions, trying to repair lines while temperatures remain well below freezing. Airlines have issued flexible rebooking policies for passengers traveling through affected airports. And the Federal Emergency Management Agency has pre-positioned 250,000 meals, 400,000 liters of water, and 30 backup generators at strategic locations across the region. They are waiting for 2 things that still have not fully returned: heat and certainty. And with another major storm system approaching the East Coast tonight, that certainty is not coming anytime soon. When you step back from the day-to-day updates, a larger pattern becomes clear. The January 2026 winter storm did not just expose individual failures. It revealed how fragile the systems we depend on have become. Start with the power grid. In Tennessee, Louisiana, and Mississippi, ice accumulation caused catastrophic damage to electrical infrastructure. Trees that had been growing near power lines for decades snapped under the weight of ice and took down entire sections of the grid. Nashville Electric Service recorded its highest number of outages ever, and nearly a week later, tens of thousands of people are still in the dark. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, which issued emergency orders to deploy backup generation across the Mid-Atlantic region, the aging electrical grid in many southern states is particularly vulnerable to ice storms because utilities have not invested heavily in burying power lines underground or in aggressive tree trimming programs. Transportation networks also buckled under the pressure. Interstate 20 in Louisiana experienced multi-day traffic backups that lasted into the end of the week. Highways across the South became impassable. And in the air, more than 20,000 flights were canceled over a 4-day period, stranding hundreds of thousands of passengers. Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport alone canceled over 1,000 flights on January 25th. The lesson here is clear. When a single winter storm can shut down hub airports in Atlanta, Dallas, and New York simultaneously, the entire national transportation system grinds to a halt. The blood supply crisis is another warning sign. The American Red Cross reported that more than 20,000 blood donations went uncollected during the storm. That represents a significant drop in the national blood supply at a time when hospitals were already dealing with increased demand from weather-related injuries and accidents. It is a reminder that disaster response is not just about power lines and snowplows. It is about maintaining the capacity to deliver essential medical services when they are needed most. There is also a deeper climate signal here. A warmer atmosphere can hold more moisture. That means when cold air and storm systems do line up, the result can be heavier snow, more intense ice storms, and larger swings between unseasonable warmth and dangerous Arctic outbreaks. Meteorologists at NOAA have also confirmed that a polar vortex collapse is expected in February 2026, which means more cold air will be pushed into the United States and Canada over the coming weeks. The question now is not only how to rebuild, but how to make sure the next winter storm Fern does not push the same systems even closer to the breaking point. Tonight, when Winter Storm Fern is fading from the maps and a new bomb cyclone is still approaching the East Coast, the National Weather Service has issued winter storm warnings from the Carolinas to New England. Forecasters are predicting heavy snow, hurricane-force winds, and coastal flooding starting tonight and continuing through Sunday, February 2nd. New York, Boston, and other cities that just dug out are preparing for round two. But for millions of people, this winter will be remembered not by storm names, but by nights spent in cold houses, by long lines at shelters, and by the quiet fear of wondering what happens if the lights go out again. It will also be remembered for resilience, for neighbors who ran extension cords to each other's homes so families could keep their phones charged and their refrigerators running, for volunteers who drove hours through dangerous conditions to staff emergency shelters, for line crews who worked through the night in sub-freezing temperatures to restore power, and for hospital staff who stretched dwindling blood supplies to save lives. 119 people lost their lives in this storm. Thousands more are still without power, and millions are watching the forecast tonight, wondering what comes next. We will keep tracking both the science and the human stories as this historic winter continues to unfold. If you found this update useful, consider sharing it, subscribing, and letting us know how these storms are affecting you and your family. And as always, stay safe, stay informed, and stay prepared. How do you think your community should change after what this winter has revealed?